Secret agent man, secret agent man. They've given you a number and taken away your name.
Okay, welcome back to EnterTheRealWorld.com. This is Secret Agent Men, Episode 7, The Bourne Ultimatum. My name is Matt Waters. I'm joined, as always, for this endeavour, for these missions, by fellow Secret Agent man, Ben Phillips. Ben, how are you?
I'm good. I watched the movie this morning.
Yeah, the rest of the movie this morning.
The rest of it, I made it up to, he sat down in like the cafe with Nikki, and then I was like, I am so tired after a week of work. I need to go to bed now. And also, like, miss all the fireworks going off at 11 p.m. last night.
This was one of the ones I was most excited about you seeing, knowing that you... Had you seen any of this? Because I know you'd seen, like, part of the first one several times. And
this is probably where I become, like, aware of trailers more than anything. So, like, I've seen the trailer of this movie. There's a bit where I'm like, oh, I remember seeing this.
Yeah, the shot of him jumping through that window was everywhere, I think.
Yeah, like, I've never seen any of this movie in any way, shape, or form, but I've definitely, like, I know imagery from it. But that's because this is what, summer of 2007, so, like, peak me starting to get interested in film was like a 15-year-old.
I was excited to do this one because there is a level of interconnectivity to the trilogy that is pretty rare for a franchise, I think. And it's one thing to ask people to keep stuff in their head 2 years at a time, 3 years at a time, but we're doing these within a few short weeks of each other. So I was like, oh cool, this will really track all of the like connectivity stuff. As soon as we decided to do a podcast featuring the Bourne movies, I was like, oh cool, it's going to be fun when we get to Ultimatum. What did you think of it?
It's really good. It's weird because I think it manages to nail all the stuff the other ones have kind of like, not failed at, but kind of like struggled to bring in. This felt the first time where the story didn't feel slight. It felt like there were actual stakes that I gave a crap about in this one, because I mean, you texted me and said, oh, we have another movie where like the plot would be over if like they just sat down and had a conversation. I was like, no, I don't think they would, because the entire thing is
early on maybe
but it's the kind of the whole thing where like the CA are just like, oh no, we just want to kill Bourne because he's a thorn in our side and him being out there makes us look bad. I'm like, no, this is interesting. I like this more than like, we know that they're the bad guys, rather than in Supremacy where like halfway through it turns out Brian Cox is the bad guy. Shock.
Yeah, so released August 2007, so 3 years after Supremacy and 1 year after MI3 and Casino Royale, so it's had some time to do some reacting to some things. A bigger break between this and Supremacy than between Identity and Supremacy, so I feel it's a well-made film, and I think they really took their time with it, and you can see that they thought everything out and took their time to like make everything what it needed to be, and that layoff probably is why. Directed again by Paul Greengrass because he did such a good job with Supremacy. Tony Gilroy is back, asterisk, I'll get to it in a minute. Joining him as writers are George Nolfi, who up until this point had done Ocean's 12 and The Sentinel, and he would go on to do Adjustment Bureau with Matt Damon. And Scott Z. Burns, who I don't know how he got this job, because at this point he had produced An Inconvenient Truth, and he wrote and I think directed something called Pew 239 or Poo 239, I don't, PU-239, which I had never heard of, but big at festivals apparently. He would later do The Informant, Contagion, both Matt Damon movies I believe, and Bond 25. He is one of the writers, as in No Time to Die. So we will hear his name again in several episodes' time. 1 hour, 50 minutes long, so slightly longer than Supremacy, but still shorter than Identity, which got a little bit bloated, so still a bit tighter. $110 million, which is significantly more than they had been spending on these, to the point almost double. Not quite, but yeah. And you can see the second one, like obviously it's got more action in it, but it's still somewhat, it's smaller scale than certainly Mission Impossible and Bond were doing. Like they're doing these huge set pieces, and then Ultimatum is like, all right, we'll try our hand at this, see how we do. And I think they did do a good job, but yeah, cost more money. And it made $444 million, which makes it the highest grossing Bourne movie, but still lower than all of the Bonds we're going to do, at least. And I don't know how the Mission Impossibles start doing. I think it's more than the first three made. But
no, Mission Impossible 1's a monster, isn't it?
Okay. I don't remember off the top of my head. I should have looked it up again, but certainly more than 3.
457 for Mission Impossible 1, so less than that.
Yeah.
Mission Impossible 2, 546, so less than that.
Than
Mission Impossible 3, 397.
So more than 3, but
more
probably
than 3.
less than all the other ones.
Yes, all the others are kind of hovering around the $700-800 million mark. So yeah, this is the highest grossing Bourne, but also
one of the lowest grossing we're going to do, yeah. Because, I mean, you know, fundamentally, for as good as these get, and as this one seems far more like they're attempting to tool it for a mainstream audience, it is still like a kind of more, I don't want to say cerebral because it is still kind of dumb, but you know, it's less like bombastic than Bond and Mission Impossible are. It's not trying to say this is going to be fun.
I also think it's the most American in kind of how it does, like, 'cause Tom Cruise is a box office draw internationally, and the thing with these movies is it is fundamentally back to like kind of like CIA, FBI kind of.
Yeah, but it's very, the first 2 are certainly very Eurocentric, and
they feel like European movies, but also they're very much made with that kind of like American lens, and I feel like in this period, especially kind of like mid 2000s, it's kind of a turn off for a movie to be this quite kind of like, even though the movie is criticizing these things that America does, it still comes off as a little bit kind of like US focused in a Euro thriller structure.
And the first one to, I mean, obviously the CIA characters have been in America, but this is the first time we've seen Jason Bourne in America in the franchise so far, because the conclusion happens in New York. A surprise little interconnectivity thing.
I'm intrigued. So, was it cold in the end of number 2?
Yeah. When he was walking away from the confession, there was snow everywhere. Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember that.
They had to, but because they shot it obviously at a different time, they had to make fake snow, and it took them 5 hours to blanket their set in fake snow. So that's. I was
going to say, did they go for the effort to like make it the same time of year? Did they do a Game of Thrones and like delay filming so they could film in New York?
No, I don't think most people. No, it wasn't snowing in New York. It was snowing in Moscow.
Oh no, I meant the not that scene, like the scene in New York when they're running around New York. There's like snow on the ground and stuff like that. Like, yes, there is.
Oh, I didn't spot that, but yeah, maybe not. They did certainly refilm that ending that is supposed to be like, this is exactly what happened at the end of Supremacy. Like, that is all entirely reshot, even the repeat dialogue. Yeah, I thought that was really fun, and I was waiting for you to be like, oh my god. So there's not a huge amount of background, because it's like, Supremacy's a hit, so we'll greenlight a sequel, and then they made it, and they brought everyone back. But interestingly, so they paid Tony Gilroy to write a draft. He did. He turned it in, and then immediately bounced, because he was going to go direct Michael Clayton and get into the directing game, which will get him the directing job on Bourne Legacy. He said about his draft, like, in Supremacy, it was his intention to push the guilt and the desire for atonement stuff even further. Like, that original ending of, like, the confession and then he just walks away. He wanted to go even further with it, so, like, I guess that's why that is as big, if not bigger, of an element in this version. However, Matt Damon has been incredibly critical of this draft that he turned in, and accused him of doing a cash grab to get a screenwriting credit and not giving a shit, and that it was like potentially career ending and that sort of stuff. So he does no rewrites. He completely walks away from it as soon as he hands his draft in. They bring in 2 new writers there was even a third, but I think he said not one word of my script is in there. So, but yeah, the 2 they bring in basically wrote this movie and just used the bare bones of what he wrote. And Matt Damon and Tony Gilroy didn't speak for several years, and then Tony Gilroy wrote The Great Wall. So maybe they should continue to not speak. It's a weird one, because Tony Gilroy has been like all over this franchise, and he will get full creative control for the next one, because Greengrass is going to bounce after this, and Matt Damon is going to bounce, and they let him write and direct easily the worst one. Well, I haven't seen Jason Bourne yet, but you're in for a fun time with the Bourne Legacy.
I mean, it's interesting, because obviously, like, at this point, his biggest movie, which he technically isn't credited as a director on, even though he directed a hell of a lot of that movie, is Rogue One.
A great Star Wars movie. Someone said the best.
I think he's also one of the directors and writers on the Cassian Andor show as well, but we'll see about that.
So our agent is Jason Bourne. More of the same, really. He doesn't really talk that much. He never smiles. I think, for as much as a like serious loner as he is, I think he's at his most fun when he's interacting with others. So when it's, the journalist at the beginning, and Nikki, and then Landy again, and then Noah Vos and all that, I think that's when he's at his most fun, is when he is actually talking to somebody else, obviously. It's a little bit more of the, like, giving people the slip, being very slick, all of that. More physical this time, probably the most jacked he had been so far. I have seen the scenes of him shirtless fighting people people in Jason Bourne, where he's probably bigger than he is here, but like in those first two, he kind of just looks like a normal dude, whereas this one, I think he is a little bit more like, hey, he's quite buff. But, I mean, there isn't really much to the Jason Bourne character, but I think Matt Damon continues to breathe more into it than is on the page, and just, does a good job of being engaging and sympathetic, even though you find out some fucked up shit about Jason Bourne in this movie.
I think he's certainly the least charismatic of our three leads that we're going to look at. Well, four if we count Renner. But it's one of those interesting things where the character doesn't need to be the kind of like smirky Tom Cruise or the sexual innuendo-y James Bond.
And I think that's what they're going for. They're like, right, this dude is legit. Like, he isn't here for like the one-liners. This is a legit, ruthlessly efficient, calculating person, and like for better or worse. And it might be why they make less money, is because they are not advertising. Come see this charismatic man say funny things and blow shit up. Yeah,
I also wouldn't be surprised if this was like a higher age rating than some of those other ones.
Yeah, there's more swearing and slightly more violence, I guess. Or,
yeah, I mean that might put a cap on like how much this can do. I don't know if it is R-rated, but like it's certainly.
I don't think it was. I think it was a slightly higher rating. So our mission at this time, Bourne attempted to get to the bottom of the whole Treadstone stuff, but there's more to it. So he goes looking for, I will use the phrase, the head of the snake, and more about his past. And this gets him onto the trail of something called Blackbriar. And then the CIA are desperate to stop him from exposing the full truth, and they're like, right, we need to kill Jason Bourne right this second. And that's basically the plot. Kind of the least convoluted, maybe for the best. So we open in Moscow. As we said, it is directly in the aftermath of his confession to Nevsky's daughter. It's a few hours later because it's now nighttime, so he's like still limping. He's limping away from the police. He gets some more flashbacks, but he does get away from the police without killing anyone. The police over the radio mention the tunnel chase, just to really hammer it home for you. This is directly after that scene with Kirill and everything. More of the like, he gets on a train, he gets off a train, like he's alluded the more self-medication. We see here our newest series of flashbacks, because in the first one you've got all the stuff on the yacht that he's remembering in bits and pieces. The second one, there's the really horrible looking highway stuff where he's in the back of the car. And this time we've got these scenes of him in some sort of weird artificial light room with a man talking to him, and it's very clearly, even from the beginning, I think, before you know what it is, it's very clearly like him being inducted into Treadstone in the first place, and that will be our like guiding light in this one, I guess. And I made a note, so Mission Impossible 3 and Casino Royale both did cold opens that were fantastic and potentially the best scenes in the respective movies almost, and this one is just kind of meh, but it is going for a cold open as well, but it isn't as impactful because nothing really all that notable happens other than, oh cool, it's like directly after the second one.
It's that weird thing where like obviously the structure is kind of fun when you start to realise that this movie is taking place within the last 10 minutes or so of
between the penultimate and final scenes of Supremacy.
Yeah, which it's quite a fun revelation, but it's also like, I don't know why they need to have this section. What benefit does the movie have from having it be set in the immediate aftermath?
Instead of just starting at that 6 weeks later, but potentially none, other than just to try and get it in your head immediately that we're connecting. Because I guess it kind of, I don't want to say it buries the lead, I don't know, it like lampshades it a bit, that like, that's what they're doing, that it's set in between, because you could otherwise conceivably be like, oh, this is after the scene in New York at the end of the second one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it makes that scene at the end kind of less jarring if you kind of like have this early setup. And but like obviously like he goes to meet Marie's brother.
Yes, Daniel Brühl.
I assume like you talking about confessions and kind of like Tony Gilroy's script. That seems like this is what he was going.
Oh, it seems like this is 100% a mirroring of the Nevsky confession. I think there's a lot of stuff in this that is deliberately shot to look like stuff in the first two. But yeah, I feel he's trying to like tie up all his loose ends, as it were. Like everyone he knows that because he says like, I remember all their faces, I don't remember any of their names. And obviously he went and confessed to Nevsky's daughter, and the only other person I guess he knows is Marie, so he's got to go tell her brother. And I wrote down, hey, it's Scott Glenn, I didn't remember him, and hey, it's Daniel Brühl, I definitely didn't remember him. I guess when Stick shows up in Daredevil, I didn't go, oh, it's that guy from the Bourne Ultimatum. And then when I watched The Leftovers, I also didn't. And I guess when we were talking about The Leftovers, I must have said out loud, oh, he's in the Bourne Ultimatum. But I definitely didn't remember him. But yeah, he's our latest CIA shady dude.
He's the legit director of the CIA.
Like, well, there was a legit director in the second one, but the actor didn't come back. So they're just like, oh, here's a new director.
Right, okay.
There is someone in the second one who's supposed to be the head of the CIA, and now it's Scott Glenn.
In the course of 6 weeks.
Yes. They could have just gotten around it by just saying, oh, there's a complicated hierarchy to this. Yeah, and you got Pam, like, failing to convince them that Jason isn't a threat anymore. But yeah, 6 weeks later, journalist Simon Ross begins writing a series of articles about Bourne after gaining information on Blackbriar from a mysterious contact, which triggers the CIA to start monitoring him. And then Jason, who is looking for whoever is, you know, at the head of all of this, makes contact with Ross, but fails to prevent his death. So did you remember that Blackbriar was mentioned at the end of the first one?
Of course I remember that Blackbriar was mentioned at the end of the first one.
Good. I didn't want to put too fine a point on it when we were doing that episode and when I was talking about the ending, but I did want to, like, say it out loud. Like, yeah, and then he says Blackbriar. Blah, 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 blah.
I remember things in movies. I have that annoying, insane memory.
I'm with you, but not everyone does. So, and also, if you remember, at this point, that was 5 years ago, so maybe not everyone would. And it's a throwaway line.
And it's a throwaway line by Brian Cox, who doesn't
was a throwaway
really have...
character in that first one.
Yeah, and doesn't have, like, any relationship to anything in this movie because he's still covering up for Treadstone.
Yeah, but then he opened Blackbriar, so I would imagine if he was still alive, he probably would have had something to... Because they're listening to his confession at the beginning, Pam and Kramer and all these people. He is involved, but yeah, it's a weird little tangential thing. So this, like, this is a real thing, this, like, keywords thing. At any given time, there are, like, 100 keywords that if you say them on a phone, almost anywhere in the world, someone will start recording that call and review it to see if you are a threat to national security. And it's fucking terrifying. And I think them putting this operation together of like, right, we're going to start tracking this person. I think this is the most in-depth one of these they've done so far. And just seeing them like, right, this is Simon Ross. We're going to pull his whole life apart. We've got people watching him here, here, and here. We're tracking his phone. We're doing this, we're doing this. And it's like, it's terrifying. And like continuing to position the CIA as like, hey, these guys are bad. And the Patriot Act is bad, and it is bad that we have this surveillance culture, and it's setting it in London. Obviously we get that little kick as they like go to Waterloo and everything, and it's like, oh god, I've been here a lot, but I don't remember it looking quite like this. But hey, when Jason calls him, and he makes sure to call like the front desk, not his private line, because then he has to answer it somewhere else, and they're like, why aren't we hearing this, and who's he talking to, all that. I love it. And I think this scene of Jason like moving Simon around this station, around their surveillance, like protecting him and all of that, I think it's both a remix of what he did with Nikki in the second one, and also it's like more realised. I think this might be one of the best scenes in the entire franchise, and it just seems like while Greengrass was a massive upgrade over Doug Liman in the second one, I think this is like really him. It's like all clicking now. This is confident. This is like, wow, this is some of the like best in show kind of versions of this kind of a scene. Yeah,
this is like where, because obviously like a lot of the stuff that was set up in the second movie is stuff that Greengrass had control of. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to do that continued thing of like playing off the stuff from the previous movie and kind of like building this cohesive world in a kind of like three movies which are quite lean movies to start with, and make this kind of like big world. But because Greengrass was in control of the visual language and what this stuff was in the second movie, it feels so much more cohesive when you get to this movie, and it's the same creative team. I mean, obviously, give or take a Gilroy, but like, it feels so much more of a piece of the second movie than the second movie playing off of bits and pieces from the first movie.
Yeah, I just think it's so well done, weaving in and out of the crowd and being like, right, keep walking forward, stop, tie your shoe, stand next to that guy in the hoodie, and then like the fucking grab team. Can you imagine being on a bus in London and Americans get on waving guns, syringe a random guy and drag him away? Like,
especially when like you've just had like some guy walk in front of you on the phone and kind of like get all up in your space. You're just like, fuck off, I'm just trying to get to work. What I really like is the only reason that it fails is because he decides to go off on his own.
Yep.
Simon Ross kind of going like, oh no, it's safe for me to go, I'm just going to run across, and then of course gets sniped in the head.
Immediately. I love that. The second he steps out the door, Paz shoots him in the head. And even before that, I think the bin man's one of them. He's like, what? No, shut the fuck up. Like, keep walking. I like when they like physically cross over, because he meets him in person and then they separate, and then when he's like tying his shoe, he like walks past him to like check on him. And I think of John Wick when I say it, but obviously this predates John Wick. That whole like, this stuff is happening in a public place and no one notices, like when they're crossing paths at the shop and he like turns that guy's syringe on him and puts him in the chair, like him protecting him without making himself seen, I think is already good.
This feels better than the scene in Casino Royale of the guy
the museum,
like leaving the bag at the museum.
Yeah. And then when he takes out that grab team on a camera and Noah Vosen is like, Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne. I touched on it in the second one, but like turning him into like a mythological figure almost, where they're like, he's in the wind, they haven't seen him, who knows if he's even alive, oh shit, he's in the middle of our operation. I think that all works incredibly effectively.
How do you feel about him being like news in the world?
Yeah, that's a bit strange, where it's like, I mean,
it
part 3 of my article series on Jason Bourne. It's like, what? Would this happen?
Yeah, but it feels like it's the kind of thing that like most people don't give a shit about. Like,
exactly.
It's just like, there's all this random shit in the world, but it's like, oh, it's just the Americans being dicks in foreign countries. And
isn't
stuff
it?
like that.
It's like a side column in The Guardian. It's not even like front page or anything. It's like a little thing they've shoved to the side. And then Paz, as our latest, like, doesn't get any dialogue asset, who shows up, and him. I like him doing it through the rotating sign. So like whenever it changes, you can see him. And the second Ross steps out by Paddy Considine, you were fun for like 10 minutes.
Which Paddy Considine role from 2007 do you think's better, this or him in Hot Fuzz?
Well, he's got more memorable lines in Hot Fuzz, but
and a fantastic mustache.
Of course. But this scene is, I think, pretty incredible. Like I remember this vividly, and I was excited to get to it before we did.
Obviously, like, you're not from London, but had you been to Waterloo much before?
Yeah. Oh, when I first saw it, no. But after this, a lot, yeah. Because, you know, it's on the way to Guildford, isn't it? Well, for me, anyway. I guess he recovers his notebook off his corpse. But, yeah, he ends up with his notebook, and he uses it to find the source in the CIA, who is Neil Daniels, who was a station chief in Madrid, and he goes there, but he's a bit too late because he's already scarpered. But he meets Nikki at the safe house, and she points him towards Tangier. So Noah Vosen is our new Brian Cox, basically, and he and Pam Landy is back. They are bickering, and they meet for that like fancy breakfast in New York somewhere. And I love him giving her shit about fucking up with Jason, but then when she criticizes this operation we've just seen, he's like, don't second guess stuff from the middle of an operation where you make live decisions. It's like, isn't that what she would have done? And it's like more of this like Pam just getting like so much shit from men in the CIA. I gotta say, like, so Vosen is played by David, is it Strathern? Do you say that? Strathern. I have never seen such a long filmography of someone I have no recollection of in my life. Like, he is one of the most forgettable people I've ever seen. He's coming off his Oscar nomination, and he's even in stuff I've seen, but I just have no recollection of him. And I just think, it's not that he's doing a bad acting job here, but like, compared to Chris Cooper, who, even Chris Cooper was underbaked, but at least he's like a presence. And then Brian Cox, it's like, he just seems so milquetoast in comparison, which is weird because this is the best. Maybe it is the best of the three, I don't know. I think I just prefer Supremacy, but like, this is the most successful one of these, and probably the best realization of the concept, probably. I don't know how you feel about Bosen, but
I really liked him.
Okay. He just seems like a guy.
Yeah, no, I think that's what I enjoy about it, is probably. Like, this feels like they haven't got someone who's kind of like a big presence. They've got like a very small character actor who is just kind of supposed to be kind of prickly and a little bit standoffish, and I just think like the motivations behind him are so much clearer for so much of the movie.
They write the character better. It's just, you know, when I'm looking back on these, I just can't even see this guy's face, you know.
I mean that's fair. I mean, I think that is,
but I think maybe that's on purpose, is the CIA is full of people exactly like this.
Yeah, like someone who you wouldn't recognise as a crowd. I think it's kind of like inspired casting, because like you run into Brian Cox, you're like, oh look, it's
Brian Cox.
It's Brian Cox.
He's here to kill all the mutants.
I mean, and Chris Cooper's a bit more of a chameleon, but it's still kind of like, you know, it's Chris Cooper, even if he changes up his face.
He's here to tell me about tropical fish and talk to me about his porn site, and then drop all of that because he's got a new hobby. Go listen to There Will Be Movies on IntoTheRealWorld.com.
Are you an Expanse fan? I feel like you would be someone who would watch The Expanse.
Yes, I just finished Series 1, I just started Series 2, and I like it a lot.
So Stefan isn't in The Expanse yet for you, but he will be soon.
Oh, cool. Thank you for that. I really like Pam showing up in the middle of Osen's operation and, like, sort of putting the fear of God into his team and, like, showing him up and, like, now, people, let's go, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And, like, don't look for whose phone was on, look for whose phone was off during this meet-up and everything, and just immediately narrowing it down to 3 people and then down to 1.
I like that the plan was, like, obviously later on in the movie, it turns out they were going to, like, string her up by Blackbriar if Blackbriar got found out and move it on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm just like, do you really think that Pam Landy would, like, stand for that bullshit?
Nope, Pam is a bad bitch. We love her.
I mean, it's just the most interesting thing is, like, obviously they're going to, like frame her for something or other, but it's just one of those things where you start to go, like, yeah, but she's the kind of person who'd have documents and be able to go, like, fuck you, I had no idea about any of this stuff.
I don't think they're setting out to frame her. It's more, if this goes south, we'll wrap it around her neck. Best case scenario, they just kill Jason, they kill Daniels, and it all just goes away. Yeah, she's been brought in as a potential scapegoat. Yeah, more of the flashbacks when Jason finds that picture of Daniels standing next to this man who owns the voice that he keeps hearing.
I also appreciated how these are not kind of quite as discombobulating as the ones in the last 2 movies have been. Like,
we got some lens flare going on for sure, but
it's
like blur or something.
But like they're less.
Yeah,
they're less plot related. Like, it's not like, yes, we do end up at the location that he's got the flashbacks to, but it's not like the core piece of information we're missing about the movie is coming from this scene. Like, the stuff Jason Bourne doesn't know what he's flashing back to, but the stuff in the present day is not being affected by him not knowing what was going on in this. Whereas all the stuff with Nesky is kind of like going like, there's something here that we're missing out on that is part of.
And Wombosi, who's still alive at the beginning of the movie. So I like that because of the like uniformity of their safe houses. This almost feels like them getting a do-over on the ending of the first one that was really bad, where like instead of like, what if he jumped off the stairs and shot someone on the way down and all of that, it's like, okay, what if he like jerry rigs this like fan with a flashlight on it and like makes it look like he's in that room, and then it just feels like a better version of that. I still don't think it would have been a satisfying like final fight in a movie, but it's at least better shot.
I also appreciate how there's just more people for him to be doing battle with. Like, there's no more of that. There's still a little bit of him walking into a random room and then someone's just like, I am also highly trained in martial arts and will fight you. And it's just like that happened in the last 2 movies where it's just like people of the same strength as Bourne. I'm far more interested in him being better than
random
the people who that they're sending after him.
So yeah, Nikki is back. It is a bit weird that she just wanders in.
I feel like there's something more there in Jason Bourne, but I can't actually remember what it is.
I am really actually genuinely quite excited and curious to see what Jason Bourne is, to be honest. I suspect a big garbage fire or just boring, but I like the whole, when they challenge her with the code word, there's the under duress and then there's the everything's okay code word, and we see that she gives and like the camera pans over to the one where everything is fine after she doesn't say the one that means she's okay, that she's in trouble. But then I also like Vosen lying and being like, how long till backup? 5 minutes. Right, backup will be there in an hour. And then she sees right through it and is like, yeah, you got 3 minutes. So presumably they know that Bourne is there and they don't buy her everything is okay, or are they just being dicks?
I think it's kind of like a mix of the two things where like she's giving them all the code words, but they're also just like, yeah, but we really should make sure.
Yeah,
like I'm sure they don't have all the information where like, well, she was kidnapped by Bourne in the last movie and was his psychiatrist in the first movie.
And she wasn't. What?
Was she not a psychiatrist? I thought she was the person.
Are you giving me spoilers for Jason Bourne?
No, I thought she was like the person who he was like relaying information. Like,
oh, I guess, but I don't think they're going to be their psychiatrist. Yeah, she would have given him missions, and they hint at something more here in a minute. But
I'm not going to have to look into this and see whether or not I have accidentally spoiled something
fine.
that I didn't even remember as a spoiler.
There is no way they can't can't dig further into this like giant hint they drop if she is like the second lead character in Jason Bourne. So it's fine. I assume something is going on.
She's fifth build in that movie, so she
What?
is not the second build.
I thought she was like the second main character. Oh my goodness.
No.
Oh, goodness.
Alicia Vikander is higher build than she is in that movie.
Alicia Vikander's in it?
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, I know nothing about this movie.
The top 5 build people for that movie: Matt Damon, Tommy Lee Jones, Alicia Vikander, Vincent Cassel, Julia Stiles, and Riz Ahmed.
Wow, is Cassel our latest?
What are you saying? They go
Dash,
after generic
Castell.
European people?
Yes, I do like his cute little calling in. He calls the police and goes, "Oh yeah, there's Americans firing guns," and he just fires his gun off 6 times and trashes the office.
No, I really enjoy like all of this. This is what I'm looking for from this franchise.
Yeah.
More than anything, is like him being better than people, and
They outsmart him, he outsmarts them more.
the other thing that I really appreciate about it, and like we kind of got it in that first scene in London with Paz, and we're going to get it with the next operative who comes in,
Dash.
is this movie kind of like instills them with a lot more weight. Like they do what I kind of wanted the first movie to do, where
they were like a legit presence who are like stalking him and stuff.
Exactly, like there is a long chase sequence with them, rather than the first time we meet them is like the scene where they die. Whereas
where he kicks a window in with a machine gun. And,
yeah, exactly. Whereas in this movie, it's like both of them have long sequences where they manage to accomplish what they want to accomplish, and also lead to kind of like
long. They do, don't they? I guess they succeed their missions. Yeah, and then you get Vosen continuing this trend of fundamentally misunderstanding who Bourne is, when it's like, oh, he's going to leak this on the black market and then all this, or sell our secrets, or I can't remember exactly what he says, but it's like, you don't understand who he is in the same way that Brian Cox didn't understand, or maybe you understand who he was, but you haven't met him since Amnesia. So they go to Tangier. Bourne fails to prevent Daniel's death at the hands of Dash, but he does save Nikki from the same fate, and he kills Dash. So on the way there is this scene in the diner where you stopped watching. Is it just
not
me?
because I was bored, because I was very tired.
So Nikki and Jason are talking. To me, this immediately screamed of when he and Marie were talking in the diner in the first one, and he's like, I don't know how I know this, but I know this, and this. I would imagine that probably is on purpose, but we also get this hint that she says it was always hard for me with you, and then it just remains silent for a while, and it's like, did you fall in love with him through working with him? Did you have a pre-existing relationship? You may know the answers to these things because of Jason Bourne. I don't now.
I genuinely don't, because I remember nothing of Jason Bourne.
Excellent. It's a very intriguing thing to just drop in the middle of this movie and then like not really come back to. After the Dash stuff, we'll go back to the Dash stuff, but after like she survives, the cutting of the hair, exactly like Marie. I'm glad they don't have sex. I think she does become the love interest, doesn't she? But yeah, they hold off from it here, and he just sends her away, and it's like, I don't know how I feel about this whole surrogate Marie thing, because I do like the whole harkening back to stuff that's already happened, but then we'll talk about this in Female Agency, I think. Pam has the very correct objection that, like, you don't have the authority to kill Nikki, and he's like, I can do what the fuck I want. And they're talking about Blackbriar in this way, is that like, no red tape, we kill whoever we want, it's all good, baby. And it's like, oh shit, this is even worse than Treadstone. And yeah, like this, and a room full of people too, as they're just shouting at each other about this. It's like, you can't kill Nikki. And he's like, yeah, well, and like, yeah, I guess they all just have to take that. A little bit racist that the Arabic agent is a bomb maker to me, but hey, we are in Tangier, and they very much struggle with crowd control, so whenever you see an actor pushing someone in the crowd out the way, that's real. They couldn't close it off well enough, so it's just Julia Stiles just pushing her way through actual people, potentially putting her in danger, but hey-ho. And we get this rooftop chase scene and the window jump, which I mentioned. They kind of do it twice, but from different angles, and it's the second one that was like everywhere. And I remember seeing the trailer for Quantum of Solace, which I haven't seen in a long time, and thinking they ripped this exact shot off. And I will be very interested to see Quantum of Solace again and seeing if I actually think that or not. Because at this point, I was like, these Bond movies, they think they've made them all good now. And obviously I turned the corner on that. I was like, oh no, they did make them good now. But I was like very anti. I was like Team Bourne. I was like, oh, they're just ripping off Bourne. Blah 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 blah. So I will be interested to see if I do feel that way in what is considered a bad movie still. But yeah, and it's ironic because in The Living Daylights, Bond runs across rooftops in Tangier to get away from the police, which Jason is doing here, and like I like the little touch of he sees the broken glass further up and he grabs some like washing off a line and like wraps his hands around it so he can vault over it, and then the police have to stop and all of that. And then his little fight with Dash, it feels like again them getting a do-over on the Castell fight in some ways, but it's got a lot more grounded, it's a lot more brutal.
I mean they literally reverse it, don't they?
Yeah,
like because
he jumps
not
through the window. Yeah,
he jumps through the window to attack him, and no, this feels like the series is playing with its own imagery and mythos, which is actually quite interesting for a series to do after 3 movies, and
in what was intended to be the last one, which we'll address in the future. But
I just find it quite interesting that a film franchise which is only 5 years old is able to kind of play with its own internal imagery in such a kind of interesting way to kind of create new stuff out of it. Like I think unquestionably this is probably one of the best made movies we've watched so far.
Yeah,
like
it's just very like tight. You know?
Yeah, to the point where like the future movies in this franchise or in this genre so fundamentally are looking at doing what this movie did.
Yep, I feel that window jump shot. I feel that is in one trailer per year every year since this, pretty much. Like,
I mean, I text you afterwards, and like the first stunt credited person on this movie is David Leitch, who obviously would go on to be one of the stunt guys on the Marvel movies, would direct Deadpool 2, would be co-director on John Wick. I mean, obviously he does a lot of stunt work, but it's just one of those things where like you see that and you go, okay, I can see a straight line from kind of like stunt coordination teams becoming the dominant force in how the visual language in these movies is made.
That's your Bourne legacy right there. The shaky cam and this kind of stunt work.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you even get to see it in Mission Impossible, where like, I think Mission Impossible does so much more with kind of practical effects and making it look visually static. But there are some scenes in later Mission Impossible movies where you're just like, holy fuck, this is insanity.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those.
It genuinely, some of the most kind of like, when you realise it's all done in camera and there's no special effects in there, you just kind of go like, this is kind of wonderful. Yeah. Whereas this movie, like, because I mean, like you take it, the scene in Waterloo, which is somewhere I've been many times. It's somewhere that I literally commuted into every day for about a year. I know that station very intimately. I was still, even though it's kind of 10 years on from when I spent a lot of time there, the movie is shot in such a way that it's kind of hard to get a grasp on the geography.
Yeah, I had this exact comment written down, is the shaky cam stuff and the way they shoot these, it is effective in some ways, but I find it very difficult to build a mental map of where everyone is. Like, when he is trying to make his way towards Dash while Dash is trying to find Nikki, I'm like, what? How is he here? And I think it's most pronounced in the car chase at the end. Like, the car chase seems like it's really good, but I have no real clue what's happening in some ways, because they do have this sort of very kinetic, very frantic, shaky camera and everything, and it's the geography of a scene and it feeling like a real space where you know where everyone is lacking.
I mean, the thing with the Dash scene where he's chasing Dash, I think is interesting in that we know where he is in relation, that the police are kind of nearby him and he's trying to find these two people. I think that's effective in that feeling of Bourne trying to find people whilst trying to evade people.
Yeah.
But the issue...
But I mean more like when they're actually inside and like now Dash is in this build and he's moving to this room and then Bourne's on this build. I don't know, it's just...
I agree. I think it's effective when Bourne is looking. I think it's less effective in telling you when Dash is aware where Nikki is and these things. But then again, I'm going to disagree with the car chase at the end. I don't think it's as good as the car chase at the end of 2, which is just kind of insanity. But I do think there's a sense of, even if there's a lack of geography, there's a sense of location in that you can tell it's all being filmed on like New York streets, which makes it seem...
I mean, there must be car chases in New York, but it felt very like, we don't see this a lot. This is very obviously New York. This isn't somewhere that we're telling us it's New York.
Yeah, I mean, like even something like Dark Knight and stuff like that, when they would do a car chase, it's like, well, we filmed it in Chicago, and we've shut off streets, and it's done at night, and there's not this this sense of stuff. You think of the car chases in these modern movies, stuff like Matrix Reloaded and all these movies, and they're all done in kind of generic locations.
It could just be anywhere, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Tenet, which it looks to be having some like quite cool car stunts, is going to feel quite as like a lived-in location as this did.
That is the strength of that car chase, is like, oh, this is New York-ass New York. And like they had to drive at 35 miles an hour because these were real streets in New York they were filming on, and then they just had to make it look as though they were going fast. It's interesting. Well, yeah, this happens right now. Jason heads to New York, he makes contact with Pam. The little connective scene from the end of Supremacy, she tells him his real name and his date of birth, and we have a car chase, and then we realise that it was not his date of birth but the address to the facility where he was conditioned for Treadstone. So what was like going through your head when you hit this scene and you're like, oh shit, it's when they had that phone call at the end of 2?
So I will admit, I watched the trailer for this movie before I watched it, and they used the scene. I was like, oh, that's interesting. They just wholesale used the scene from Bourne Supremacy in this movie. I'll put that in the back pocket. And so when I hit it, I was like, kind of going like, oh, so legit, did they reshoot it, or is it actually
reshoot it? Yeah, because they've added stuff around it, obviously, but they had to reshoot it because I think
she would
if
have
you
looked
at
different
it side by side, yeah, she would look different, and yeah, but yeah, they had some stuff around it with Vosen and all of that sort of stuff. But I thought it was a really cute thing to do.
No, I think it's probably one of the more impressive. I think the only thing that I would kind of like put against it is obviously the end of the second movie is him kind of like walking the streets of New York with the Moby song playing, and it kind of feels like him getting away and stuff like that. And then this movie completely changes the context of that and doesn't really give you the same shots or the same.
Yeah, I think they're trying to say, yes, this is where he's walking at the end of 2, but he's been spotted now. But it's shot completely differently. Where like,
but I think that's the main issue with watching them so close together, is that like watching them 3 years apart, that scene maybe wouldn't kind of like but to me I was kind of go, are they saying?
I think your brain would just lie to you and be like, oh, this is exactly what it was in the second one. Whereas here we're like, oh, it's not the same. But it's a cute thing to do, and to have it not be the beginning of your movie or anything like that, to do it 2/3 of the way through your movie. It's like, okay.
Is it that they've bugged Landy's phone, or is it that she says a word that kind of sets them off to like note her?
I would imagine every phone line in a CIA building is listenable by anyone else in the CIA, to be honest. Because like she gives this message over the phone. Oh, and also, what did you think of like? So obviously she tells him, your name is David Webb and this is your birthday in the second film, and then we learn that's not his date of birth at all. And I don't know if you actually see a piece of paper in the second that shows that she's saying something different than what is written. There can't have been, because the internet would have pulled that apart over the years between the films. But
I guess that's the benefit of the movie, is that it's kind of out in that period where I doubt the Bourne people are on a forum like the Lost fans or whatever. It's like pulling apart the references in the Bourne movies.
This is true. But we see this time that when she says the date of birth, there are different numbers written on the paper she's looking at, and it's like, oh, that's quite cute that like this line has been out there since 2004, and now we learn it's a major like plot point for this third movie. I thought it was all really cute. I like Vosen and his team like following Landy as she goes to ostensibly meet Bourne, and then Jason just breaks in while they're out and takes the Blackbriar files, takes a fingerprint off his mouse, calls him, and he says his name and like uses it to get into the safe. And again, we have this cute thing of like, yeah, I'll come meet you. Where are you? He's like, oh, I'm in my office. Like, oh, I doubt that. Why? Because then we'd be having this conversation face to face. Bye. And it's like, I think they can't do it too often, and I don't know if they'll do it in Jason Bourne, but like this gets me every time they do it, and I think it's a cool little thing that they keep doing.
Has he stolen a card from that guy who's like the assistant to Vosen? Because there's that scene where like Vosen calls his like second in command. It's just like Bourne's in the building, go there,
and they have to like shoot the glass.
He should shoot the glass because his like card doesn't work. And I'm just like, has he done? Yeah, has he done something in regards to that to like trap him in?
Disabled the lock or something. I don't know.
I like that no one in the CIA kind of like bats an eyelid to that, where it's just like obviously something bad's going down because someone's brought out their gun in the CIA and started shooting at doors.
Yeah, but there's people in the Middle East that they need to keep track of. Then Paz opens fire on fucking cops, man. Paz was the sniper at the beginning, and he is called on again at the end here. And Jason is trying to get away from the police and the CIA. He like drives a car off a roof onto a lower roof. the police have him at gunpoint, and then Paz just starts shooting. It's like, oh shit, he really is like above everything, isn't he? We have this car chase, and yeah, I think we kind of said it all, is that like I think the geography, the location is effective, but I kind of just had a hard time keeping a real good track of like, why is it turned here? I like him, like, you know, he grabs the seatbelt to brace himself and stuff like that before he crashes into the side, and then they make it mirror what happened with Kirill, right up to him walking up to him in the car and then leaving him. With a lot of car chases, I think they're more fun than they actually are for me a lot of the time. We're not really car chase guys, you and I, but...
No. It's why my least favourite Tarantino movie is Death Proof, which is literally ends with like a 45-minute long car chase.
And yet you like Mad Max, which is a 90-minute car chase.
This is true. I have to ponder these things. Mad Max fucks is all I'm going to say in response to that.
We'll see if Ben forces Mad Max onto There Will Be Movies Volume 2. And then we will have a discussion, because I fucking hate Mad Max, and I'm the only one who does, apparently. But
I doubt I will win that battle.
I mean, you can put it on if you want to put it on, but anyway.
So what I quite liked is, so Paz manages to catch up. I kind of missed the connective tissue. I know he was in the hotel room and he gets in the car, presumably, but I kind of missed him joining the chase, I think.
He just shows that when Bourne is like, he's in like a parking lot and the cops like corner him.
Oh, and he pulls up then and starts shooting.
And then
okay.
Bourne raises his hands, and then like Paz is like 50 feet behind them, and he misses Bourne somehow.
I did enjoy how the car chase ends in a very similar way to the end of 2, with him like...
Exactly, like with Kirill, yeah.
Oh, that's good. Again, it's nice to see a movie play with its own mythos, which...
Yes. More of this.
Like, exactly. Like, it feels like... I mean, obviously Bond starts to do it to less good degrees, but then that's a franchise with kind of like 25 movies worth of mythos, whereas this is working with 3, and all 3 of those movies have the same scriptwriter, and 2 of them have the same director.
Yeah.
It's a lot more easy to kind of do what this movie is kind of juggling, but it's still impressive to watch a movie be this kind of quite tightly focused. Yeah. And I mean, I don't want to say it's like influenced by TV, but obviously this is an era where TV is starting to come into its own, and you have The Sopranos and The Wire and Deadwood kind of like reaching the end of their runs at this point.
Yeah. So he reaches this, and it's not really like a CIA facility, it's a fucking hospital, and he finds the corridor that he's kept seeing, and he meets Albert Hirsch, who is this voice he keeps hearing, and he confronts him about, like, because Nikki talks about earlier on, like, oh, they, like, break their subjects down before they can train them, and, like, there's a lot of hints about, like, mental conditioning, and, like, did they torture him into, like, becoming this person? But then he learns he volunteered for Treadstone in quite a bombshell. He just sort of starts running away. Paz comes for him, but lets him go after he repeats the words the professor said to him. Vosen takes a shot as he's jumping off a roof, and we'll get to that in a second. But so Pam and Bourne meet face to face for the first time. He gives her the files after he likes her reason for helping him, I guess, and she uses them to protect herself. Like, she faxes them to herself, someone in the CIA, and like, just like, go get a lawyer, Noah.
I like that. I like the kind of the easy way to end that scene would have been to have him just shoot in the head, but it's one of those things where I like that there's still checks and balances within this system where, like, oh, you can't just shoot a CIA operative, like, in cold blood in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I feel he maybe could have if she hadn't have faxed those documents and just pinned it on Jason, but, like, as soon as he's incriminated and then it turns out she's dead, it's like, yeah, I will do you for this. So he knows he's lost. A cute thing is, among the pages in that whole Treadstone Blackbriar file, one of the pictures of the targets that Jason killed is Richard Chamberlain, who played Jason Bourne in the 80s TV movie. So, like, you could construct a headcanon where, like, he killed the original Jason Bourne. And it would have been really cool if Richard Chamberlain was the dude in the corner that he has to kill without asking, and then he goes, now you are Jason Bourne. That's like, that would have been nice, but I don't know if Richard Chamberlain was alive. I don't know anything about Richard Chamberlain. I'm sorry. But yeah, I like his line about, you know, you don't deserve the star they'd give you on the wall at Langley. But I think the meat here is discovering, like, little by little, we've discovered Jason is a bad man, or was a bad man, and it's like, oh, he was an assassin and he killed people in the first one, and in the second one it's like, he did kill someone, like, he did kill these 2 people and made them look like they kill each other, and it's like, oh, that's pretty fucked up. And then we learn all of this, and, like, he's made many kills over the years, and we see them there, and he talks about how he remembers all the faces but none of the names. And learning that he volunteered for this program, and that to pass his final test he just had to kill someone on orders without knowing who they were and what they did and stuff. Like, it's heavy shit. Like, to say that your hero that we met in a moment of like vulnerability, you know, like drowning and like healing and not knowing who he is, and we've been sympathetic towards him all the way through, and then like to reveal before any of this he was some soldier who signed up to just kill people, I mean, you know, to protect American lives or whatever, but like it's framed in a bad way of like, you know, he was a bad person. And I think Matt Damon is really excellent in this scene that could have been pretty rote, as he sits there having to kill someone and like really thinking about it. And I think, you know, this idea of like who he was versus who he is he actually a different person, arguably, from the amnesia with the influence of Marie? Because we've seen him be like this person who tries not to kill people. Like, he disposes of guns, he lets people live, he walks away from stuff, and he generally only kills when it's a situation where it's like, this person will kill me if I don't kill them, so I have to kill them. And then it stays with him after he's done it every time. I would genuinely be intrigued to see where Jason Bourne goes in a world where he now knows this, that he signed up for this life and then did it willingly, and did all of that. I think all of that is really interesting.
I think the thing though is that obviously they do stuff to him to break him. Where like yes he volunteers to do this, but they do fundamentally, like, they've got all the documents kind of saying like, oh, he did the tank test or whatever it was.
Oh yeah, they're like dunking his head and like bagging him, and I feel like they confronted him with this test multiple times and he kept not doing it, and they kept dragging him away and doing more, and like this is when he finally did it.
Which yeah, I think is that interesting thing where obviously like he is not a good person, no. But he willingly goes into it. He's obviously some kind of soldier going into this because he thinks he's going to help people, and then to make him into their perfect weapon, they go like, right, you're not going to sleep, we're then going to put a man in front of you, we're not going to tell you why you have to kill him, we're just going to tell you what his name is, essentially, and just all these different things. It's like, yes,
I guess he's not like a monster, but like this is all like really dark and heavy stuff, and knowing that he signed up for this, and even if they did go to extreme lengths to like turn him into what they were looking for, that revelation of you signed up is kind of a heavy thing to put on him.
Oh, 100%. I agree with that. It's just, I think they don't fully go, this was like, he isn't involved in the creation of Treadstone. He isn't helping develop the tactics that kind of like put all these people into it. He's someone who signed up for something, and obviously what he signed up for was not what he thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and we do have to remember, like, while he was willingly doing all of this and he killed many people, he did also, without any prompting, refuse to kill Wombosi because of the kids and stuff. So like that good person was obviously there. But yeah, I think it's interesting. And like they talked about how now he knows everything, is there an interesting story? And they would wait, or Matt Damon was like, I would rather wait until we have that interesting story. And I would be interested to see where they take it, Jason Bourne, or if in typical sort of reboot or long after sequel fashion, they kind of just do a generic thing that has no real connection. I don't know. And I think Matt Damon is really good here in that scene, and Albert Hirsch, like, you know, he's only in it for a very short amount of time, but like he has this like perfect voice for this like mad scientist type character, I think, and it's all happening in like fluorescent lighting in this secret back room. Like, yeah, I think it's all really good stuff. But yeah, and then in the aftermath, like, he lands obviously in the water, and it's very clearly framed to look like the opening of the first movie where he's in the water and he's still, and then we see the news reports afterwards where it's like all the key players have been arrested, but then when Nikki hears there's no body was found, she smiles and we see him swimming away to Moby. And yeah, I think if they'd left it here, like you even asked me, why did they make more of these? I think that's a really nice piece of, and it's almost like this would have been like very good artistic integrity to tell your trilogy that like it's a flawed first movie, but I think they make the first one better in retrospect with what they do with 2 and 3, and like to tie it up neatly and tell this complete story would have been great, and to have left this like indelible footprint on action movies and stuff, it would have been like, oh cool. And I feel by making 2 more that are bad to boring, they have kind of hurt the legacy of the Bourne franchise, where like arguably this is the weakest of the 3 franchises we're covering, but if they just stopped here, I might say it's the best. I don't know.
I mean, obviously, Bond's going to come down to how this last movie plays out, but it's obviously an institution, and obviously 2 of the movies are really fucking good in that franchise.
I think it goes good, bad, so hopefully this next one is good. But
hopefully we're on a good trend, and Mission Impossible obviously has the worst movie we're going to cover, presumably. Like, I don't think Bourne Legacy and...
I think Mission Impossible 2 is at least more fun than the Bourne Legacy. Not necessarily on purpose.
But then, obviously, Mission Impossible goes from strength to strength over the course of 4 movies where, like, they fully nail down what that franchise should be. And it feels like this is the crystallization of what this franchise should have been. And you could have, like, I would have cut out the scene of him swimming away and just left it with her smiling. You don't need the scene of him swimming away.
We didn't find a body.
We didn't find a body. She smiles.
But I think someone wrote down, we see him floating like in the first one. It seems like he's dead, but then he starts kicking his legs, and they got very excited about it. But it doesn't. I don't think it's actually filmed that well. But describing it, I think it sounds good. But I probably would have left it out as well.
But yeah, I mean, like, this is easily, like, I sent you the list I've been updating privately in the background of all this. This is the second best movie we've covered. Even with my kind of latent affection for JJ and Mission Impossible 3, this is a better movie than that.
I think I like Supremacy more as like a small, I don't know, like a self-contained thing, but then I think this is doing some meta stuff that is very impressive. I love it. Like, obviously, I love all 3 of these, and obviously Identity, I got some shocks about how it's not as good as I remembered it, but I don't know, I think I have more of a, like, emotional connection to the second one than this one, but, like, I think it is very, very good. I think what hurts it, and we can slightly move into that with Villain Watch here, Desh, while, like, the whole stalking each other across Tangier thing is good, he never says a word, and he gets racially stereotyped, and Paz barely says a word, and, like, I understand why they do this, like, having these, like, silent, ruthlessly efficient killers who are just really good at their jobs, but then when Professor was, like, a chatterbox, and Jada spoke to him a bit, it kind of breaks it. It's like, I almost wish none of them talked. But then the stuff with Bourne saying, look at what they make you give, like the Professor said to him, and then that, like, really resonating with Paz, I think that's really effective. It's just, I think when I think of this movie, I'm like, while all the stuff in Tangier is in theory good, there's not a lot to attach to here, because Desh is such a non-entity in terms of a character.
See, but where I would disagree with this, yes, he is a non-character, but I think this movie goes a long way to making everyone else feel like a character. I think, like, Simon Ross feels like a character. I think Nikki Parson feels like a character. Noah Vosen feels like a character.
Yeah.
Pat Landy feels like a character. Hell, I think Albert Finney as Hirsch is really fucking good in that kind of, like, one scene that he gets to have. These kind of, what they're doing is they're saying, like, right, you know how Jason Bourne doesn't say much, and the only reason he says anything really at this point is because he's kind of, like, becoming a person again. Yes. He's overwritten his kind of, like, amnesia that they've kind of forced on him to not remember things and just be a machine. We're going to put him up against 2 machines. This is like the Terminator, but if they were human, kind of thing. And they're there to be physically impressive, and they're there to be a kind of force of nature. And I think both of them, like, Joey Ansah is great as kind of, like, this physical presence in the movie.
Yeah, the little capoeira, like, capoeira is not the same as free running, but, like, it reminded me of that, like, little parkour bit in Casino Royale. It's very, like, these unorthodox styles of movement have infiltrated cinema at this point, you know? And putting a dude who's doing these, like, little side flips and stuff in this, it was like, yeah, this feels very measured and stuff. Yeah, and I think overall, as a collection of villains, they've achieved it the best here out of the 3 of them. Like, Vosen, I think, is the best written of these, you know, the Chris Cooper, the Brian Cox role that we've had so far, for as forgettable as I think he is to look at, but again, potentially on purpose. I think that's really well done. Paz is really memorable for me because he kind of arguably gets the one-up on Bourne at the end, and, like, he left Kirill because he assumed he was dead, he left Paz because he assumed he was dead, but Paz actually gets out and gets the drop on him. And, you know, this idea that, like, because Treadstone was the first program, and then they scrapped it and made Blackbriar, and Desh and Paz both complete their missions, albeit they don't manage to kill Bourne. This idea that, like, this is an upgrade over Treadstone, and Paz kind of gets the drop on him. I thought that was pretty effective. Hirsch, as you said, I think is really good in a very small role. I think all of the villains combined work.
Yeah, this is an example of a movie in which having multiple villains kind of all coalescing into one thing really actually worked. We've done movies before where we've kind of said, like, oh, I wish they didn't split the focus between these two villains, they just had one of them. Whereas this movie, I don't think any of the villains detract from what other kind of villainous characters are doing, because it's part of more about an institutional villainy, which I think does help this movie in terms of this is obviously quite a politically charged movie in what it's saying about the state of American foreign access in the mid-2000s. And it's coming down on something which, again, probably wasn't the popular opinion at that point. Well, I guess you have to say it probably was the popular opinion by 2007, because the next year they get rid of George Bush.
Yes. So, did you throw up? Now, the average shot length in The Bourne Identity, I believe, was somewhere around 4 seconds. I believe in The Bourne Supremacy, it was like 1.4 seconds. 2 seconds in this one. But some of the camera work when he's fighting here is the most pronounced, like, whoa, this is moving a bit too much for me. I don't know if it's just because it's a higher shot quality in terms of the film. Like, I think this one looks visually the best of these three we've had, and maybe that makes it more pronounced, the higher def or whatever, but very shaky cam. And as I said, I think it does have a bit of an impact on you being able to understand the geography of what's going on, but, you know, it continues to be a stylish, cool thing that we've maybe seen too much of because everyone did it.
Yeah, I think we have to kind of call out that I think one of the biggest movies that kind of took the shaky cam style and ran with it in a blockbuster setting comes out in 2007 as well. Transformers.
Oh.
Undeniably,
Yeah,
Transformers
you're right.
looks like a Bourne movie.
You're right. Oh, God, but they're so ugly, though. Oh, God, just lumps of grey that are indistinguishable, ripping each other apart in slow motion with lens flare, and shaky cam humans who are all a little bit sweaty and yellow. Oh.
So I'm looking at the MTV Movie Awards for 2008. They've got a list of best fight nominees.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Damon versus Joey Anser for Bourne Ultimatum is on the list. Let's just run down some of the other films that are on this list.
Sure.
Alien versus Predator for Alien vs Predator Requiem.
Obviously.
Hayden Christensen versus Jamie Bell for Jumper.
Obviously.
Tobey Maguire versus James Franco for Spider-Man 3.
Oh, okay.
Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan versus Sung Min Ming for Rush Hour 3.
Fuck yeah. Oh, 3? Oh, no, fuck no. Sorry, my bad.
And the ultimate winner of the best fight of 2008 at the MTV Movie Awards, Sean Farris versus Cam Gigadent in Never Back Down.
What?
Yep.
What are any of those words? I don't recognise either of those actors or that
Sean
film.
Farris versus Cam Gigadent for Never Back Down.
I don't know that film. I don't know those actors.
Directed by Jeff Wadlow, who would go on to do Kick-Ass 2 and Truth or Dare, which is actually kind of fun.
Female agency. Pam Landy is still a boss bitch. We love her. Getting to one-up Vosen and his crew, all of that. Nikki, though. This is multi-layered for me because, on the one hand, she's got more to do than she has before. I don't like that he is still dragging her around a little bit. I don't know how I feel about her becoming a surrogate Marie. I'm glad they don't sleep together, as I said. She doesn't speak for her last, 20 minutes of being in the movie. From when her and Jason are agreeing on what to do with Dash until he puts her on that bus and says it gets easier. She doesn't speak. That's not good. And then, if you look on her... I mean, you would have to, freeze the movie to see this, but when they have her profile up on the screen, it says that she has some combat training in some martial arts disciplines. When she tries to help Jason with Dash, it comes across as very just sort of undisciplined and woman getting backhanded unconscious by man to get her out of the way during fight scene. I appreciate that this is meant to be some mega elite assassin man, so she shouldn't be able to beat him, but it's not a great trope to happen overall. And while I don't think, for the most part, this franchise treats the women overly badly, it's if this one feels far more male-dominated somehow. Or maybe the second one was, I don't know. But
I like... Joan Allen and Julia Stiles are both actually kind of good in this.
Yeah.
But I do think that they are backgrounded a lot more than they have been in previous movies. There's less time that Bourne spends with either of them face-to-face. They're both kind of put upon into, negative positions. I feel like we're 3 movies in now, away from Mission Impossible 2 and Grading on a Curve. They've all done decently by their female characters, I feel like.
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part. I'm worried about where we're going to go. I'm very worried for the next appearance of Nicky Parsons.
Same. And I really don't remember what happened with Wreck-Up Vice, but it's... yeah, I don't think it's going to be good.
Yeah, I mean, Joan Allen is apparently in Bourne Legacy as well, so...
I don't remember her, but that doesn't mean she wasn't.
Is she going to be like the
on a
Brian
screen
Cox
or
type?
something? I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. But yeah, and then there were no more Bourne movies, and this was the end, and it's great. Unfortunately, that's not the case. We will be back with Jeremy Renner in a few episodes' time. But next week, Quantum of Solace.
A movie I have not seen since the cinema.
I didn't see it in the cinema, but I haven't seen it since the first time I saw it. So yeah, a good long time ago, 10 years. What if we actually like it now?
I feel like I'm going to dig out my review that I wrote for my old blog that I did. What did I give it at the time? Am I going to regret what I gave it? Jesus Christ, I'm such a fucking wanker. 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10?
I know.
That's a coward score for it's not actually good, but I feel I should give it a higher number.
Oh, no. The actual score was 7.5.
Oh,
but...
fuck you and your half point. 7
Exactly.
actually means 5 in my experience. And that's probably overgenerous based on the legacy of this movie. But we will get there, and we will also get to the Bourne Legacy, the episode after that. Of Quantum of Solace, Ghost Protocol, and then we'll be back with Bourne. But for now, this has been another episode of Secret Agent Men. Go to enthrillwhat.com. Like, comment, subscribe, look at all the stuff. We've got new podcasts. It'll already be up by the time you hear this about Breaking Bad with Jerome Cuson and Kevin Ford. And remember, this podcast will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Goodbye, Ben.
Are you actually going to start this now?
As we've always said, this podcast will destruct in 5 seconds. Bye, everyone.
Secret